Okay, so in today's video, we're going to take a look at part 6 of the Reading and Use of English section of the C2 Cambridge Proficiency exam. And in part 6, what do we have? We have a gapped text, and it's the part that causes so many problems for students at B2, C1 and C2 level. For one of two reasons, really. Basically, people either spend too much time on it or they spend too little time on it. Too much time because it's a long text with long paragraphs that are missing as the potential options to fill in the gaps with. So there's a lot to read, basically. And the other problem is that, well, as it's only 7 questions, a lot of the time people think, well, you know, I've got to move on to part 7 because that's the multiple matching task, and there's 10 questions, there's more points available there. Well, actually, no, there's more points available in part 6 because it's 2 points, 2 marks per correct answer. There are 14 points in play in part 6. And remember, each wrong answer means you're losing 2 points, right? So, more important than part 7. Absolutely, it's more important than part 7 in terms of its weight, in terms of its contribution to your final score. So I'm going to go through an example exercise here. I'll leave a PDF in the description so that you can have a look at it as we're going through it. But I'm going to go through this part of the exam as precisely and concisely as I can, right? So let's take a look at how I would do this part, how I would approach it, because there are lots of different techniques out there. But this is how I would do it. Let's take a look. Okay, so I absolutely despise this part of the test, but I guess let's just go for it. So this is an article called Animated Life, and this is how I would do this, how I would approach it. So let's read. First paragraph. Adam Farish works in stop motion animation, the technique of making TV cartoons by manipulating static models rather than using drawings or computers. It might sound a bit childish, but it isn't all child's play. I tell people what I do and they go, "You can't do that. Get a proper job." A sheepish grin spreads across the face of Adam Farish, 36, who spends 8 hours a day playing with dolls. "It makes me laugh," he shrugs, and on cue, he laughs. It's an explosive, wheezy laugh, a brief eruption of permanently suppressed amusement. Even after 3 years as an animator, it seems as if he still can't believe his luck. So either I think they're going to continue introducing this character of Adam Farish, or maybe he's going to say something. There's going to be a comment now. Even after 3 years as an animator, it seems as if he still can't believe his luck. He feels lucky. Maybe we'll hear something along those lines. He'll say something that makes us understand that he feels fortunate. And then after the gap, it says his company's big project at the moment is the new Rupert Bear series, Following the Magic. So maybe it suggests, maybe in the gap, they're going to talk about other projects that the company is working on. I'm not sure. Okay, so let's take a look at the first possible answer, A, here underneath my picture down here. A, option A says, because he's known worse, these threats to his livelihood bother Farish more than most. These threats to his livelihood? Well, people saying get a proper job, but that's not a threat. That's not a threat to his livelihood. That's not something that might mean he will lose his job. That immediately sounds wrong to me. I think I'm ready to move on to B here. I don't think A is possible, really. Okay, B. But even this isn't the most laborious process. No, that sounds like they have just described a series of things that are laborious, and they certainly, the writer hasn't done that. No, definitely not B. It's definitely not B. So this is initially quite easy. C. Small, stocky, and shaven-headed, fairish does not immediately make one think of children's television. Well, they're continuing to describe this man, so it could be that one. I don't know. Small, stocky, shaven-headed, fairish does not immediately make one think of children's television. He works in Manchester for Cosgrove Hall, a famous old animation shop responsible for classics such as Danger Mouse and Count Duckula. So they're talking about things that they've worked on in the past. The building is a warren of black baize curtains separating a series of untidy studios. The atmosphere is one of chaos, held precariously at bay. Describing the place that he works at, has described a couple of things that they're famous for, and then in the next paragraph goes on to say his company's big project at the moment is the new Rupert Bear series, Follow the Magic. Yeah, it sounds very much to me as though the first one is C. I would definitely go for C in 37, but I'm writing my answers down here, so we'll see if I get them right. Okay, good. We will read the rest of the answers just to make sure there's none of the others really work in that gap, but I'm fairly certain it's going to be C. Towards the end of even the longest day, however, comes the moment that animators live for. Sounds like they've described the difficult aspects of the job, doesn't it? So no, I don't think it's D. E. Having started as a plumber's apprentice in the early 1990s, well, it's describing him. He found himself without qualifications and then suddenly without a job. When economic recession hit, people stopped paying each other. It's describing a lot of bad things that happened to him. I suppose it could be a contrast to the look that he feels now. People stopped paying each other, and I was bottom of the chain. He was left with just a sleeping bag, a penknife, and a change of clothes to depend on. His company's big project at the moment now, that doesn't follow on logically after the gap. No, it can't be E. F. In fact, Fairish's dedication knows no bounds. Well, it said that he feels lucky. It hasn't said that he's dedicated yet. So no, I don't think it could be F, really. He creates cartoons in his spare time for his own amusement. Let's see the final sentence of F. It says, it started off as a bit of a light relief, but it's gradually taking over home life as well. It's talking about him, his character, the way he loves animation. Don't think it really makes much sense. G. But then after a period of studying production management, no. Hasn't said what he's done yet, so we're not going to mention then another thing that he did. Immediately just doesn't sound right. That would not, of course, be the reaction of a child. But while a child might put a more positive spin on this, well, nobody's put a negative spin on it so far. Just said that he feels very lucky. So no, I can't see it being any of the others. I'm fairly confident in saying that 37 is C. Okay, so the rest of the text should go a bit more smoothly now. So the first answer is always the most difficult one. Okay, so let's move on to this paragraph. So we've said C. Let me just remind you of that. That's the answer I'm putting in 37. So his company's big project at the moment is the Rupert Bear series, Follow the Magic. Consequently, Fairish has spent many months absorbed in Rupert's surreal existence. It is acting, but you're not using your own body to act, he explains. We come in and have to pretend we are 5-year-old toy bears rescuing elephants out of trees. It does something to your head after a while. It does something to your head after a while. Okay, so he's describing how it's a strange job, I think, no? What about after the gap in 38? It says, this great mountain of work must all be performed to a minute level of detail and with complete accuracy. So they have clearly in 38 listed a load of things that you have to do as an animator, right? And he's saying how it's pretty difficult. It goes to your head after a while. It does something to your head. You know, it's probably stressful. There's a lot of work. That's what we're looking for in 38. So could it be A? Because he's known far worse, these threats to his livelihood. No threat to his livelihood is mentioned. It's not A. But even this isn't the most laborious process. We have to pretend we're 5-year-old toy bears rescuing elephants out of trees. That doesn't sound laborious. It sounds strange. I don't think that's quite right. That honour goes to speech, as every lip and tongue movement for the sound has to be posed and photographed, and the result must synchronise perfectly with the recorded soundtrack. The character may be pointing and simultaneously doing a little dance. Writers, on the whole, are blithely unaware of the nightmare such actions will bring for the poor wretch who translates their imaginations into reality. Well, okay. He's saying how difficult it is, yeah. Saying how... But it almost sounds after the gap in 38, this great mountain of work must be performed to a minute level of detail. I mean, it almost sounds like that's what is already said in B. There's something not quite, and that first sentence about it being a laborious process doesn't sound like it is a laborious. I don't know. I don't feel like it's B. What about D? Towards the end of even the longest day, however, comes the moment of magic. No, the moment that animators live for. It's a dead object, says Ferris, and then all of a sudden it's moving around and talking and jumping about. It's as if he is describing some kind of magic spell. You can't see until you've done it, so it's all got to be in your head until you're finished, and when you press play, that's when you find out if it all works or not. This great mountain of work. Well, I mean, it sounds like they're talking after the amount of work. Now, D doesn't sound right either to me. Having started as a plumber's apprentice, found himself without work, with a penknife, a change of clothes. That's talking about his personal experiences. It's not E. In fact, Ferris's dedication knows no bounds. Does something to your head after a while. He even creates cartoons in his own time. That last sentence in F, it started off as a bit of a light relief, but it's gradually taking over home life as well. Well, maybe, I don't know, could it be F? Taking over home life as well, you'd think that they'd gone to qualify that in some way. And they don't really. This great mountain of work must be performed to a minute level of detail. No, it's not F. But then, after a period of studying production management, no. It's talking about his personal education, no. Let's hope it's H, because the others don't seem to fit. That would not, of course, be the reaction of a child. It does something to your head after a while. That would not be the reaction of a child. Okay, maybe. But while a child might put a more positive spin on things, okay, the negative spin was it does something to your head after a while, no child could muster the prodigious levels of discipline and concentration required to see the job through. So even though a child might find it, might be more positive about having to play with dolls all day, they wouldn't have the conscientiousness to do it. All the cartoons are filmed with stop motion animation, so Ferris spends his days breaking down the behaviour of his character into thousands of tiny steps, posing the puppets into each position and taking a picture of the scene to make a frame of film. This sounds like it works, right? It sounds like H. I think I'm going to have to say H, yeah, because it says this mountain of work, this great mountain of work must all be performed to a minute level of detail and with complete accuracy. Yeah, that sounds right. If a character makes a large gesture, for instance, there must always be a slight recoil in the limb before they do it. This must be posed and photographed. Blinking, which a character must do all the time, if it is to seem human, involves replacing an open eyelid with a half-closed eyelid and taking a picture, then replacing this with a 3/4 closed eyelid and taking a picture, then switching to a fully closed one and taking a picture, then putting on the 3/4 one again. And I think I know what this one will be. I think I know which is the answer here, because this all sounds fairly laborious, right? So which one was it? I think it's going to be B. So you have to, it's describing the blinking, how they have to put one eye in, take another eye out, and it's 3/4, half, 3/4, and it's very, very laborious, right? But even this isn't the most laborious process. That honour goes to speech. Every lip and tongue movement for sound, pose, photograph has to be synchronised perfectly with the recorded soundtrack. The character may be pointing and simultaneously doing a little dance. Writers, on the whole, are blithely unaware of the nightmare such actions cause. Such actions will bring to the poor wretch who translates imaginations into reality. And after the gap in 39, it says, when you factor in all the work done by others in building and lighting the sets correctly and providing each character with their props and costumes. Let's move over to this side. The props and costumes. There we go. It is easy to see why stop motion animation has a reputation for being, well, slow. Yeah, it makes sense, right? Because it's such a laborious process. Nearly had a heart attack because they rang the door there. But it's all good. So yes, stop motion animation has a reputation for being slow. We've got a target of 13 seconds a day. Most other companies do 3 or 4. But because we are doing series work and there's tight deadlines, we have to push it to 13 seconds. That is 325 frames, in other words. It's quite strange, he muses, because it's so... He searches for the right word. Dull. It does sound dull. Yeah. It sounds like it would drive you absolutely mad, this job, doesn't it? So he's saying how it's dull. He's saying how it's laborious. It's saying how they have to get 13 seconds done. Right, after the gap in 40, it says, so, as far as anyone can tell, the knack of getting it right is handed out at birth and not to many people. Right, so this isn't something that just anyone could do. So I'm a bit lost now. Let's have a look. We haven't used A yet. I don't think I've used A. So could it be A? Because he's known far worse. These threats to his livelihood. There's no threats to the livelihood. I've used B. I've used C. D. Towards the end of even the longest day. Well, he's saying how dull it is. Aha, right, I think it's D. Towards the end of even the longest day, however, comes the moment that animators live for, pressing play, right? So this is the good part of the job. Yeah, it's very dull, but then it comes the end of the day and you press play and everything comes into life. Yeah. You can't see until you've done it. It all has to be in your head until you're finished. And when you press play, it's when you find out if it works or not. Yeah. So it's a very long, dull day every day, but then there's the moment of magic, no? Could be D, yeah. Looks good. Maybe I can't quite see the relation though as we move on. So as far as anyone can tell, the knack of getting it right. Okay, getting it right, yeah. Imagining it in your head and trying to, move everything perfectly and accurately, I guess, is handed out at birth, right? There's just people who are naturally good at this. And it's not handed out to too many people, this ability, right? You have to imagine all of this in your head. It's very dull, it's very boring, very laborious, very repetitive. And you have to be able to, envision the cartoon, right? Yeah, visualize. You have to be able to visualize everything before you press play. Yeah, that sounds all right. I think. I'm going to leave it as D at the moment. I'm going to take that risk. Yet, despite the rareness of the skill, the animator's job is seldom secure. Aha, yes, most work is on short-term contracts. Farish's runs out in May. And as with so many labour-intensive industries, other countries are taking an ever-increasing share of the business. This one's very, very clear to me. It's got to be A, because he's known worse. These threats to his livelihood, absolutely. The job's going abroad, and the fact that there's a lot of short-term contracts, even his, that runs out in May. These threats to his livelihood bother Farish less than most. For 6 years, he was homeless, on and off, and even food was not guaranteed. I've already hit the lowest you can go, he says. And then it goes on to describe his childhood a little bit here, I think, or his backstory, as it were. So Farish grew up in Aldershot, an army town, with a father who believed firmly in discipline. This belief engendered the opposites in his son, who, despite being bright, barely attended school and managed to leave with a bad report and an attitude problem. I was a bit mouthy, he says. Generally my own fault, right? Talking about his experiences there. I think I know which option this is going to be. And then after the gap in 42, it says, he survived on what work he could find, moving on from town to town, once he'd outstayed his welcome. So it talks about what he did from leaving school as a problem child, essentially, and then sort of surviving, how he survived. And I think it has to be E, no? I think having started as a plumber's apprentice after leaving school in the early 1990s, he found himself without qualifications and then suddenly without a job. When economic recession hit, people stopped paying each other and I was at the bottom of the chain. Yeah. He was left with just a sleeping bag, a penknife. A penknife. So, yeah, where was he living? And a change of clothes to depend on. And this is how he survived, right? Getting work wherever he could, moving on from town to town. Yeah, I think 42 has to be E. Okay, so just one left here. Moving on from town to town once he'd outstayed his welcome. At times, I loved it, he admits, the total freedom from responsibility. And then it starts getting a bit cold. And you think, help, how am I going to eat? I don't know why I'm finding this funny. It's not funny. That's the situation he got himself into. He was starting to think, this is getting pretty bad. And then after the gap, it says, now Farish makes £30,000 a year, at least until May, and has never been happier. despite the insecurity, the boredom, and having to explain what he does all the time, he says he loves his job. Right. Yes, I think I saw one say something about... So it's going to be a continuation of what he was saying. And I've used A, B, C, D, E. So it's either got to be F or G, right? Because I've used all of them except F or G. So let's... F. In fact, Parish's dedication knows no bounds. Doesn't make sense, right? Following on from help, how am I going to eat? What about G? Yeah, this sounds like it's continuing with his story a little bit. So he is in the situation, we have to get from help, how am I going to eat, to now I'm earning 30 grand a year. But then after a period of studying production management at drama school, Farish enrolled on a web design course. One day they had an animation lesson, and out of 20 students, Farish was the only one who could do it. On his teacher's recommendation, he gave up web design and took a degree in animation. I never chose to be an animator, he says. It never occurred to me that you could do this for a job. Now, Farish earns £30,000 a year. He loves his job. Final sentence here, especially when the dolls get something exciting to do. Yeah, it's got to be G, hasn't it? And let's just check the answers. And hopefully I've got all of these right. So 37C, 38H, 39B, 40D, 41A, 42E, and 43G. There you go. All written down for you, though you're probably seeing them the wrong way around. Okay, so that's how you get 14 points in that part. Never sure how to do these videos with the part 6 ones, the gap text. They're really awkward. I can either make a really hyper edited video or do it like this. Let me know what you thought in the comments if you've got any questions or anything. If you want some more personalised content on this channel, you know, there's plenty of people who are joining, but I'm not getting sent a lot of stuff to do, really. I'm always willing to have a look at your essays and correct them, members that is, and take suggestions for videos. Trying to set up a Telegram group, potentially WhatsApp groups, things like that, to get members involved in the content in the content of these videos. So hit the blue button under this video to have a look at those options if that's something you're interested in. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.